Okay, thank you everyone. We are going live right now. I would be definitely scheduling this, trying to let in people. Yes, hello, 045. We see you. It will be great for us to know your name. But yes, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Frances Meloha. And for those who know me very well, my name is Inkem. But the problem is I actually started going by my English name because for some reason they call me Nikem. I don't know where the I comes from, really. So just to make me happy and make them happy, I'm like, okay, Frances. So yes, if you call me Inkem, you're totally right. Frances Meloha. I am excited to host this session today. It's something that, when I was called upon to, host and be part of, I was pretty much excited because I wish there were things like this when I came in, and I'm pretty sure some speakers as well would, definitely confirm, so that there's a platform for us to actually share ideas, know what we're supposed to expect, how to go about things, especially when you're a student or, when you're done with school, because it's a ball game entirely, like a different ball game entirely once you're done with school in Canada, right? So I wish there were a platform, or maybe there were, I wasn't too investigative. But that notwithstanding, we have this now and we're excited to present this to you. So today we're having the very first virtual session for LOI Excellencia Initiative. We have our speaker, Sharon. We have Pascal. Ike will join in later. I think he has a meeting, but he'll be here. And then there's me, Frances. So we're going to start right now. We have started, but we're going to, move into the details because we plan to use just 1 hour, 10 minutes max so that we don't go over time, hopefully. Okay, so first off, I would like to talk to you a bit about LOI Excellencia Initiative. What is this initiative about? Majorly, this initiative is about, trying to provide a platform for mentorship, empowerment, and excellence for, Black students in Canada, especially those who are Africans. It was started by Dr. Aloysius Anyiche in 2023, basically to promote excellence among Blacks. So there is a platform for mentoring Black students and Black professionals in Canada. There is a platform for those who are, apart from you wanting to be a mentee, you can be a mentor. There's a platform for students, especially fresh students coming in, what to expect, how to navigate through. So there are a lot of things and there are a lot of programs we will be having. So please, by all means, again, I have put in a link on the chat. Kindly, please, after the session, or if you need to leave before then, I don't see why you would, because this is so good. But if you do, please make sure that you go to that link and provide your details so that you can provide feedback to us, as well as we, letting you know programs that we're going to have going forward. Now moving on to the main thing for today, and that is talking about all the things that I'm sure you saw our flyers and you're like, okay, what are these people coming to talk about? Our very first speaker today is Sharon Shamuyayira. Sharon, please correct me. I keep learning and for some reason on learning how to pronounce it rightly. I'm guilty.
I think that was the closest we've had.
Okay. All right. So Sharon is one of the powerhouses. I've known Sharon now for almost 7 years when I came to UBC, when I came to Canada. And currently she is the Enterprise Partnership Manager DoorDash Canada Grocery Partnerships. Sharon was born and raised in Zimbabwe, and she graduated from UBC with a full ride MasterCard scholarship. I think Sharon, you graduated in 2019, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, so Sharon is a decorated student leader, including but not limited to being named SLC Face of Today recipient and Jumpstart keynote speaker. As a MasterCard scholar, Sharon was president of the Africa Business Club, and after UBC, she started her career in IBM Toronto, where she was named a rising star for her work on a course designed to educate 4,000 employees on communicating with colleagues of color. Sharon recently graduated with a master's in data science with the University of Edinburgh. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Sharon.
Thank you, Nkem. I'm so excited to be here today. Nkem gave me, when I first messaged her, I was like, okay, I'm ready for my 7 minutes. She's like, no, we've got 10. So we've got 10 minutes. So we've put together 10 minutes of content. I know you'll be watching the clock. All right, so I guess I'll get started and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I grew up in Zimbabwe. I was an only child to a single mom, and when I was 17, I would say I got a scholarship that changed my life, which took me to an international school. And from there, I got the wonderful MasterCard Foundation scholarship, which was really put together by the MasterCard company, which was focused on educating young African leaders. And I think that's where I met Nkem, and it was a wonderful program for students, but it meant that when we got to campus, we immediately had a little bit of community, which could be very different for a lot of you when you get to the university. I think with MasterCard, they made sure that there was quite a few of us, so you already had familiar faces. Now, I think the big thing for me when I arrived in business school, so I did a Bachelor of Commerce. I think the big thing was realizing that what had made me successful in high school was not what would make me successful in university. And what I mean by that is that the game is different, right? Like when you're starting to think about internships, you hear people start talking about internships. Where are you going to intern this summer? Like, what experiences are you getting? How are you getting prepared for this? And it became very clear to me that I was not prepared for this market, and to be interviewing here, to be going into the Canadian work landscape. So I think for me, out of more fear than anything, I over-indexed on I am going to do as many things as I can, because I don't know which one of these things they'll like. So if somebody told me there was an opportunity to be a teaching assistant, I took that on. Somebody said, be a residence advisor, I took that on. Somebody said, hey, let's learn about public speaking and learn how to speak, I took that on. Any single opportunity that came up, I was like, I will not be caught wanting. I am going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that I secure an internship and to make sure that I eventually secure a job. So I think in doing that, two things happened. One, I think it starts a domino effect. The more things you get involved in, the more you hear about other opportunities, and slowly you start to build relationships with different kinds of people. And those relationships have paid off in different ways and are still paying off today. I'll talk a little bit later about the relationships. But I think it was important early on for me to realize that because I didn't know what the bar was for success, doing as much as I could to make sure that I put myself in a position to be successful after university. And I think that's the first piece of advice that I can give, is to be very much open to exploring as many things as you can while you're in university. So from there, we had done, here I was, probably second or third year student. Now I've got a couple of experiences. I've been in a couple of high performing organizations with students clubs and everything. And through one of these networking events that I go to, I hear about consulting. And I think to myself, okay, cool. These people look cool. They look like they're working on business problems. And consultants always brand themselves as doctors to businesses. And I said, that sounds great. I'm going to tell my mother even though we didn't become a doctor, we became a doctor to businesses, mom. I am on the right track. So that's how I ended up hearing about consulting. And with that, I also heard about the Strategic Consulting Mentorship Program, which was a program at UBC that was really focused on having UBC alumni who had done really well in consulting come back and like mentor students. And this was why programs such as this and the consulting mentorship program that I went through are very important, because it's only the people who have walked the path are able to actually give you a map, right? They're able to give you shortcuts for what you should be doing. So during this program, I was in the summer of 2018, I was together with 40 other students, and we spent the summer learning about consulting, learning about interviews, how to interview. And at the end of the summer, what then happened is that you would then have a mock interview. And then once you were successful in the mock interview, you were guaranteed interviews with all the top firms. So that meant like all the big firms, McKinsey, BCG, KPMG, EY, all the firms, you got to interview with them. So I was very fortunate, and I got through the mock interviews and I got through my first rounds. When I got to my second round of interviews, I didn't receive any offers. Now, as you might imagine, I had now this motion of I want to be in consulting. And then, I was telling everybody that summer I'm going to be a consultant. I'm going to get my job. I'm going to interview. I'm going to have my job secured 1 year before. And then I came back and I had no job. And it was now 1 year out. And to be honest, you've already interviewed with most of the firms. So you interviewed with like 7 companies and they've said no to you. So now your options are very limited. And I remember at the time I was a TA, I was really depressed. I was a TA and I remember my prof, like I used to go TA for this prof and I would spend like the full day with him on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And during the class, he would have me play music to just break apart the class, because the class was 90 minutes long. And he would have me play music. And I would play such depressing music until one day the prof called me to the side and he said, "Hey, students are only in first year. I don't know why you're playing such depressing music." And I was, then I told him how I hadn't been able to secure a job and I was really sad. And he was like, "No, like things are going to work out, Sharon. Like you are talented. You will get a job. Just take a moment to really reflect on why it was that you weren't successful." And I think that's another big lesson that I want you to take away from this today, that it's important to have champions in a community around your university in the form of professors, in the form of friends and other students, because those are the people who are going to be honest with you. Those are the people who are going to help you as you are on your journey. So making sure that you're building those connections. So with that, I think I reflected and I realized pretty quickly that while I was telling my story, I wasn't thinking about my audience. So I had all these great experiences, but I wasn't taking the time to think about if somebody is a Canadian leader at the top who's like a partner or like a VP, and we're in the final rounds and they're interviewing me, what would they like to hear about me? And I realized that what was missing was that I wasn't thinking about what are some experiences that I've had that they can resonate with. And one that I really had was in my first summer, I had sold books door to door. So I remember in my last interview with IBM, that's all we talked about. She asked me about selling books door to door. And I talked about meeting all these Canadian families and learning so much about Canada. And we talked about like just what it's like to be a parent. It was a human to human connection. So, and I think leaving that interview, I knew that I would get the job and I wasn't surprised when I did, but it took a lot of cycles and reflection to get to that point. So just remembering that as you create and brand yourself, yes, it's wonderful to tell your stories that make you unique, but make sure you're thinking about your audience, because they have to be able to see themselves in you if they're going to actually end up working with you. So from there, I eventually moved across the country from Vancouver and I came to Toronto to start out my career. And I think for my career, I'll focus on 3 or 4 things that I think have really been helpful for me. The first one is like knowing that you don't know anything when you start out and allowing yourself to be coachable. It's very easy for us, especially in this generation of social media where we can watch social media and be like, no, corporate will do this to you, corporate will do that to you. I think when you're starting out, it's be coachable and take feedback. When I started out, I worked for a lady who was a perfectionist. She checked every slide I did personally. She checked every email I wrote. She would correct my grammar. She would move my slides around. And I remember it was annoying initially. And I was like, this lady's doing too much. But I think it taught me such impeccable attention to detail. And, by the end of it, she was like, when you're a consultant, Sharon, you do not know what documents you work on, where they'll end up. You want to make sure that even when you're not in the room, your work is always produced to a very high standard. And that has always been something that I took away from my first role, that it's very important to always make sure that whatever you're doing it to a high standard, because you don't know where that information will end up. So the second piece is getting mentors. And I think I've spoken about this. It's very important, whether it's while you're still in university or once you graduate, it's very important to identify people who are doing interesting things you like in the organizations or your peers, and make sure that you're going to them early so that they can teach you the vocabulary of corporate. Corporate speaks a very different vocabulary. Corporate politics is very different. You need to have somebody who is taking the time to help you navigate that. Now, the third thing that I think I want to highlight is knowing when to leave. So I have worked with IBM, I've worked with Salesforce, and I've worked with DoorDash. And when I joined all those companies, when I joined IBM, I was pretty sure I'd stay for 20 years. I was like, I'm going to make it to partner. When I joined Salesforce, I was like, I will make it to VP.
Become the VP or
I'll be
president.
VP all the way to the top, But I've always said, it's so important that you start your job when you start your job, I like to say that you should give yourself 18 months. You should give 12 months to learn the job and actually learn everything about the organization and the people and the work you're doing. And then 3 to 6 months to do the job when you now know it. And then determine if the job is actually the right job for you. Because now you know how to do the job. And now you then, is the team for me? Is the organization for me? Is the manager for me? And if they're not, then you think about like what you would need next in your role to be successful. And it's important for you to make that decision and actually take steps towards it, because you find that that's when you grow in your career. You find that that's when you increase your earning potential. You find that that's when you do work that is actually more exciting to you. So I think I am probably out of time. The last one I will leave you with is, I wish I'd started this one earlier. Read a lot of books on careers and listen to podcasts. Your experiences are not really as unique as you think. A lot of people have gone through what you have gone through, and through reading books and listening to podcasts, you'll probably learn a lot more about how to navigate your career. I know I focused a lot more in career, but I'm happy to take questions in the Q&A about other elements of this.
Oh, wow. Wow. I'm here actually writing notes, because I cannot say I'm hosting this session and then, vital information would pass me by. There's one key thing I want to thank you for that you said: you don't know anything. It's almost like you have to unlearn everything, wherever you're coming from, Nigeria, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa. It's almost like as if you have to, unlearn everything that you have learned. Now, of course, you don't lose your identity, right? That is key. But you uprooting yourself and starting in another climb, it's a whole different ballgame entirely. So you have a whole lot of things to unlearn, and you do have a lot of things to relearn. Now, if you're not taking notes, another thing that is key is the corporate culture. Knowing when to leave. There's a way that you would reach in a company or especially when you start working and then you reach this level that you know so much. Now, one thing I want to point out: no one is indispensable. Like, the company can you can even be the superstar. Tomorrow they wake up and decide, oh, sorry, we're getting people cut off and people get laid off. But you see, what you have learned stays with you. That experience, that knowledge, it stays with you, right? So you're not starting from scratch. If that ever happens to you, you're starting from experience. Read a lot of books. Gosh, how can we overemphasize the importance of this, Sharon? Thank you so much for pointing that out as well. I would love to give us more tidbits, but then I want to make us understand that the summation of all this, very important points our speakers would be making, we would need you to please, key into the chat, and there is a link for feedback. So once you provide us with that information, we would be able to send details to you on, programs on this session. If you want to get a link of where this session has been recorded, and so you can play back and with your friends, or just just sit on it, or maybe probably turn into your personal podcast, be my guest. So please, you need to check the chat box, and there's a link there. Moving on very quickly, I'd like to introduce our second speaker today. He's someone who was very instrumental in a lot of people getting their first jobs in Canada, myself inclusive. So Pascal actually was my second, well, he was a year, ahead of me in UBC. And most of the time, there's this joke I always tell him and, tell people that know us, that most times when we go to, how you have counselors, and people would be like, oh yes, I want to talk to the career advisor. I would go to the career advisor and they're like, have you spoken to Pascal? Have you spoken to, because they don't say Pascal, they say Pascal. Have you spoken with Pascal? Have you spoken with Pascal? I'm like, does Pascal work with you guys? Because I don't understand. I'm trying is a powerhouse, and I don't know what Pascal has done that he doesn't do right, honestly. So I am very proud to introduce to you our second speaker. Having worked with prestigious institutions such as Slalom Consulting, RBC, BMO, and Standard Bank. With a strong background in strategy and innovation, he is also a serial entrepreneur with proven track record. As the CEO of Binta, a pioneering Canadian fintech platform, Pascal leads his team in leveraging AI to address the challenges faced by newcomers. Now, Binta empowers newcomers to establish their financial identity in North America, providing access to essential financial services and support. Pascal holds a BSc in engineering from the University of Lagos, Nigeria, and an MBA from the University of British Columbia. Everyone, participants, join me in welcoming Pascal Okundu. Hello, Pascal.
Hi, Nkem. Nice to see you again. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. Sharon, that was some very good gems. Thanks for sharing. Sharon, I think your session was a very solid one. I was taking notes myself, so thank you for sharing all those great insights. So my name is Pascal, as Nkem said, and I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share a few things that I've learned. I've learned very little since I came to Canada, and I'll be sharing that. Hi, everyone. Abimbola, hi. So I'll just talk a bit about myself, my journey, where I'm from, and where I am today and where I'm headed. So hopefully that could maybe spark some fire in anybody today, hopefully. So I was born in Cameroon, and that was where I actually grew up. I know most people do not know this part of my life. So I'm proudly Nigerian and proudly Cameroonian as well. I moved to Nigeria after my A-levels to do my undergraduates with in University of Lagos. I did engineering, spent some time working in Nigeria for a few banks, and started my my few businesses in Nigeria while I was a full-time employee. I always had something going on by the side, which were usually bigger than my paid employment. So I ran a few businesses in Nigeria. I was in real estate in Nigeria. I was doing technology as well. And then the whole jackpot thing started. For those of you in Nigeria, know what that means. So I decided to move to Canada a few years ago. I came in as an international student. I'm not as lucky as Nkem and Sharon. Maybe I'm not so smart to get a scholarship. So, so I paid myself through school. The financial burden was huge. I was an international student studying in UBC. You can go do the maths if you go online now. And I would say that I was very lucky. When 4 months into my being in Canada, I got my first full-time job to work with RBC while I was still doing my MBA. And I finished the MBA, went to join RBC full-time, and then RBC, I went to BMO, And then from BMO, I went to work for a very cool, wonderful consulting company. It's one of the best experiences I've had in my entire life working. We had clients as big as Adidas, Nike, like name all the big brands. Those are the companies that we used to work for at the time. And it was a great experience, but I wanted more. I'm usually restless. I'm usually chasing, well, not chasing, I'm usually trying to explore myself to see what else I can do. And I left my job last year. It's a very beautiful job. I love the job, love the people, but I had to leave all of that behind and decided to venture to start building my own business. So it's not something I recommend for everyone to do. And I'll talk about that in a bit, but it's been very, very rewarding, very, very great so far since I left my job. And I'll share a few things about what I've learned being in Canada for 8 years now. So in Nigeria, I used to, not in Nigeria, in Cameroon where I grew up, I used to hawk on the streets. If you know all these guys that sell in traffic, that sell water, bottled water, plantain chips. So that was me as a young person. I know most of you have never, ever imagined me in that life, but that was me. So I did that for about 7 years, between when I was like 5 till I became a full-blown teenager, when I became aware of girls. So I started becoming shy. And I told my mom that I could no longer do it again. But that was where my life started from. So I didn't do it because it was fun. I did it because I needed to survive and go to school. So that was my life. I needed to give you this part of the story so that you can connect it to where I'm coming from and the lessons I've learned from that, being on the streets to going through corporate life and then building a business right now. So in Nigeria, I tried, and part of what helped me was I built very powerful networks from the streets that I grew up in up until the presidency. So I could make anything happen. I could speak to anyone. I could make I was a rainmaker. All my friends knew me that I could make rain fall even in summer. And that helped me go through my career. I never applied for a job. I could get any job I wanted in the country. And so I was very, very lucky to go through the corridors of power, business, and money in Nigeria. And moving to Canada was one of the hardest decisions I ever made because it meant leaving all of that behind and then coming to Canada to start life afresh. So when I moved to Canada, I knew that I don't have any network, I don't have any friends, and I had to adjust culturally. I wasn't talking like this. So all this burger and chips I've been eating has changed my tons a bit. So, but I'll tell you what I did when I came to Canada that has been extremely, extremely useful and beneficial in helping me navigate through the kind of jobs that I got and how and why I'm building a business today. So I knew I had no network. I came into Vancouver. I knew no soul in Vancouver. Nobody, I knew nobody. I didn't even have an accommodation. So I landed at the airport. I hadn't even booked an Airbnb. So that's the kind of person I am. I can venture into a desert and make water happen inside. So I came into Vancouver, no accommodation, no nothing. And that is all history. So I found a place to stay eventually and then started the journey. But what has really helped me is that I knew that whenever I go to a new environment, as long as there are human beings living there who are making progress in life, who are like killing it, right? My question to them always is, how are you making this happen? So I always ask people, how are you making this happen? And I am very, very deliberate when it comes to meeting people, building my network, and making sure that I stay in touch with them. So I was very, very intentional when it comes to the people that I got close to, whether they are friends, networks, mentors, whatever you call them. So I was building my network from the very first that I came into this country. And I have a long list of people. Then it used to be a book, but today I have a Notion page where everybody I meet every week I meet a new person. I have your name, your first name, your last name, your email, your phone number documented. And I write down what you do and how I think we can work together in the future. That list is very comprehensive. So whenever I go to any city, I was in Toronto last week and 2 weeks ago. I hosted about 15 people in the city of Toronto. I sent all of them messages and they all came. We sat down and we had time talking about life, business, and the future. So I do that even in Vancouver. If I've not invited you and you're my friend, just start hanging tight. I'm rotating the strings to get to your turn soon. But
I'm sending you a message
one
right
of
now.
the things that one of the things that has really helped me is if you come into a place like Vancouver or Canada, it can be very overwhelming, right? If you come from a country like my country, Nigeria, it can be very overwhelming. And I found out that a lot of people want to hang around environments where they feel very comfortable. You want to talk to people that sound like you, look like you, behave like you, eat your type of food. It's okay. There's nothing wrong in that. But the reality is that it can only take you so far. So I learned to take my networking beyond my Nigerian brothers, my Cameroonian brothers, my Ghanaian brothers to who else can I work with? Who else can take me to the next level? Who else can I partner with to break down the walls of, whatever you people call it, racism and all of that, right? And that has been very, very helpful in terms of how I have progressed. So I worked in RBC, I worked in BMO, I worked into a top consulting company. I did not apply for any of those jobs. So my networks helped me break down those barriers. I've never submitted a resume for any of those companies and got through an interview. Never, ever done that. So those are some of the things that I was able to do with just networking, making people know that I can do stuff and make them trust me. The other thing I want to share is, sorry, I have 10 minutes. I'm trying to make sure that I touch 3 things before I drop today. The other thing that I've learned is that working hard. People say you should work smart. I believe in smart work, right? But the difference in working hard and smart is if you work smart, you move fast, right? But you don't have debt. So I always recommend that you do both. So work very hard in such a way that you make things like discrimination and racism irrelevant, right? You can be so good at what you do in your craft that you make it very hard for people to ignore you. So that's what I usually recommend for anybody new in this country. You want to make sure that your skills, your abilities, the things you can do. People say that immigrants work twice as hard. It's not twice as hard. Sometimes it's 10 times, depending on where you find yourself. So you want to make sure that you're putting in a whole lot more that makes you not just visible. People can find it very hard to do without you. So that's where I think you want to find yourself, right? So the next thing I also want to share is I always recommend people having some what's it called? Dose of ambition in your career. So it's easy to just go through life and, just take things as they come. But I think if you are very intentional about where you are and where you want to be next, I think if you are very, very deliberate in scripting how you want to go from point A to point B, I think it makes your journey even clearer and better. And from my experience in the past 8 years being in Canada, not so long, I found out that there are 4 types of immigrants who come to Canada. 4, okay? There are people who come into Canada and they deal with all the struggles, the challenges, the kind of jobs you get are way below your skill set. Some don't even get a job, right? Some people come in here and find out that they have to live way below their level from where they're coming from, and they cannot cope. And they say, you know what? I'd rather go back to where I'm coming from. And they go back. So that's the first category of people that I've seen being in Canada. And I call those ones retreaters. It's not wrong, right? You just choose your fight and your stress. So people go back and say, I can't do this anymore. This is not my place. And that's totally fine. There's a next set of people who I call, I'll tell you their names in a bit, but these guys coming, Canada gets in the best and the brightest from all over the world to come into Canada. A lot of these people come in, like you and I, skilled, competent, capable, educated, but people don't land jobs that are within their skill set. They take on jobs that are way below their skill set. There's nothing wrong in that. And I recommend that if that's the job you get as your first job, take it, right? Take it and prove yourself that you can do a whole lot more. But most people take those jobs and they stay there. They stay there because the jobs can pay the bills. It answers your financial queries in the immediate term, and then you feel comfortable. And then the desire to push to the next level is not there anymore, because each time you try, something hits you and you stay there. You try again, something hits you and you stay there. You don't even get your attention beyond that point. So those people just stay there. They peak, they climax, and they don't bother to see what else can I do with my skill set. I call those ones the survivors. And a lot of them, in front of their families back home, they look great, but within Canada where you are, you know that you are capable of a whole lot more, but you are unwilling to try. The stress is too much. So I call those ones survivors. And there is a third set of people who, they go through the first and second phase, they deal with all these challenges, but they're still very resolute, determined that they will cross beyond this point and land jobs that are within their skill set or even better jobs. And those ones keep pushing and they succeed. And that's where most of us lie. You have a job today, you make a decent 6-figure, you are even approaching the mid 6 figures. That's fantastic. I call those ones the survivors. And then there is a final set, which is where most people never bother to think about. Okay, so you can get those jobs, make a decent salary, but the big question is, some of us came into Canada, you occupied better positions, bigger roles, you've done bigger things in your country. And we found out that some people go through all these 3